friends, Laura's here, and today I will be your guide. Together, we will listen to a new story, an emotional story, told by Emma, a young woman who moved back from New York City to her small hometown in the United States. This is not only a story, it is also a lesson. As you listen to Emma, I'll join you at the end of each part. Together, we'll look at some useful English phrases, vocabulary, and even cultural notes. That way, you'll not only follow the story, you'll also understand the English behind it. And here is the best part. If you stay with me until the end of the video, we will practice together. I will give you small sets of new words, and you will learn how to use them in real sentences. So, are you ready? Let's dive into Emma's world. Let's feel her emotions, learn her words, and grow our English step by step. Stay with me until the end, because this story has something powerful to teach you, not just about English, but also about life. Part 1.
My name is Emma. I'm 28 years old, and last week I returned to my hometown after living 6 years in New York City. New York was always alive. The streets were never quiet, not even at midnight. I remember lying in bed in my small apartment, hearing the sound of traffic, the rumble of the subway far below, and even music from a neighbor's window. It felt like the city was breathing all the time. Sometimes I loved it, the energy, the movement, the people. But other times I wanted silence, and silence never came. Life in the city made me walk fast, talk fast, even eat fast. In the mornings, I squeezed into crowded subway cars. At work, I sat in a small office, staring at a computer screen for hours. The office had windows, but the view was just another building's wall. Every day felt the same. When I stepped down from the train last week, everything changed. I was back in Vermont, in the small village where I grew up. The air smelled fresh, almost sweet. The streets looked empty. Instead of car horns, I heard birds singing. My heart felt strange, as if the world had slowed down, but I had not. I pulled my suitcase through the quiet street. The old grocery store was still there, its sign faded but familiar. The local diner, where my friends and I used to buy milkshakes after school, was closed now. In its place was a dark, empty shop. Some houses looked bright and new, painted white or blue. Others seemed tired, with broken fences and peeling paint. My memories were everywhere, but they did not fit perfectly with what I saw. When I reached my aunt's house, the door opened before I even knocked. "Emma," she cried, pulling me into her arms. Her hug was strong and warm, the kind of hug I hadn't felt in years. Inside, the house smelled of bread and cinnamon. The wooden floor creaked under our feet, just like it did when I was a child. For a moment I felt safe, as if time had not passed. At dinner, she made chicken soup with vegetables from her garden. The bread was hot, soft, and buttery. We sat at the old table, the same one I had eaten at as a girl. She asked about my life in New York. I told her, the city is big. I was busy every day, but I missed this place. She nodded, pouring me more soup. Her eyes were gentle, but I could feel she was curious about why I really came back. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom. The bedspread was different, but the shape of the room was the same. Through the window, I could see the garden where I once played hide and seek. I should have felt at home, but instead, I felt like a guest in my own house. I lay back and stared at the ceiling. The silence was deep, almost heavy. In New York, silence was rare, but here, it wrapped around me like a blanket. I thought of the girl I used to be, running through the fields, laughing with friends, calling someone special on the old house phone late at night. I whispered to myself, I didn't come back only for the quiet life. I came back for him. The next morning, sunlight filled my room. The sky was bright, the kind of blue I hadn't seen in years. I sat by the window and looked out at the garden. My aunt was already there, cutting herbs and humming softly. Everything felt calm, but inside me, I was restless. I didn't come back only to escape New York. I came back for Daniel.
Let's pause here. Emma has just told us about her return from New York City to Vermont. Do you notice the way she described her feelings? Let's look at 3 important expressions together. First, she said, the streets were never quiet. This is a very natural way to describe a noisy place. Instead of saying always noisy, which sounds like a dictionary sentence, native speakers often use the negative form, never quiet. You can use it in many situations. My office is never quiet during the day, or the kitchen is never quiet when my family is cooking. Try making one of your own. Maybe my phone is never quiet because my friends send so many messages. Next, Emma said, my heart felt strange. Here, heart does not mean the physical organ. It means emotions. In English, we often connect the heart to feelings. For example, my heart was heavy means I felt sad. My heart was full means I felt happy and grateful. And sometimes we say, follow your heart, meaning follow your true feelings. So when Emma says her heart felt strange, she means her emotions were unusual, maybe confused. Finally, she said, I felt like a guest in my own house. This is a metaphor. She doesn't mean she was really a guest. She means her home felt unfamiliar after so many years away. In American culture, this is common. When people move far from home for study or work, they often return years later and say, it doesn't feel like home anymore. You can use this expression in other ways. I felt like a stranger in my own family, or I felt like a tourist in my own city. So, here's my little challenge for you. Think of a place you know well. Can you describe it using one of these expressions? Maybe, my classroom is never quiet, or my heart was full when I saw my friend. Or, I felt like a guest when I returned to my old school. Say your sentence out loud. It will help you remember. Great! You've just practiced some of Emma's words. Now, let's go back to her story. In the next part, Emma remembers someone very special from her past, Daniel. Let's listen. Part 2.
Daniel was my best friend in high school. We sat next to each other in English class. He always carried too many pencils in his pocket, and he would drop them one by one during the lesson. I laughed every time, and he laughed with me. After school, we played basketball on the cracked court behind the gym. Sometimes we played until the sun disappeared and the street lights flickered on. Daniel had a way of making life feel lighter. If I was worried, he told a joke. If I was sad, he listened without interrupting. When we walked home together, I always felt safe, even when the streets were dark. I remember the night before I left for New York. We sat on the steps outside my house. The summer air was warm and the sky was full of stars. I told him, one day I'll come back. He looked at me, serious for once, and said, I'll wait. His voice was quiet, but his words were strong. I smiled, and I believed him. In New York, I met many people. I had colleagues, neighbors, even friends. But no one felt like Daniel. I went on dates, but I didn't fall in love. Every laugh reminded me of his laugh. Every kind word reminded me of his kindness. I carried him in my memory like a secret photograph, one I could not put away. Sometimes, when I walked through Central Park, I imagined walking by the lake with him. When I sat alone in my apartment on Friday nights, I imagined him knocking at the door, saying, "Let's go shoot some hoops." But it never happened. He was far away, and I was stuck in my city life. I kept waiting for the right time to return. Each year I said, maybe next summer. Then another year passed. Work became busier, rent became higher, and life kept pulling me forward. But Daniel stayed in my mind, unchanged. Now, sitting again in my aunt's house, I wondered, was he really waiting? Did he still think of me? Or had he already given his heart to someone else? That evening, I looked at an old photo on my phone. It was Daniel and me at the county fair. I had cotton candy in my hand, and he was laughing so hard his eyes were closed. We were 16, carefree, and certain that friendship would last forever. I touched the screen with my finger and whispered, "I'm back, Daniel. Are you still there?"
Let's take a closer look at some of the phrases Emma used in her memories of Daniel. She remembered when he said, "I'll wait." This is a very simple phrase, but it carries strong emotion. In English, when you say, "I'll wait for you," it can mean waiting 5 minutes, or it can mean waiting years. The meaning depends on the context. For example, if your friend is late for coffee, you can text, "No problem, I'll wait." But if someone you love is going away, saying, "I'll wait for you," means much more. It is a promise of loyalty. Another phrase Emma used was, "He made life feel lighter." Here, lighter doesn't mean less heavy in a physical way. It means easier, happier, more positive. You can say, "Her smile makes my day feel lighter," or "Talking to my friend makes my problems feel lighter." In American English, this is common when we describe someone who removes stress from our lives. And then Emma said, "I carried him in my memory like a secret photograph." This is a beautiful metaphor. She doesn't really carry a photo in her pocket. She means she keeps the memory hidden but close. In English, we often talk about carrying emotions or memories. For example, he carried guilt for many years, or she carried the memory of her childhood home wherever she went. It shows how feelings stay with us, almost like an object we hold. Here's a little cultural note. Emma and Daniel played basketball after school. In small American towns, the basketball court is often a gathering place for teenagers. It's not just a sport. It's also a way to connect with friends, laugh, and spend time together. That's why the memory is so strong for Emma. Now, a challenge for you. Can you think of someone who makes your life feel lighter? Try saying, "My friend makes my life feel lighter." Or, "Spending time with my family makes my life feel lighter." Speak it out loud. You'll feel the meaning as you say it. Excellent practice. Now, let's return to Emma's story. She is finally ready to see Daniel again. What will happen when they meet? Let's find out. Part 3.
2 days later, I finally walked to the lake. It was late afternoon, and the sky was painted in soft orange. The path was familiar, trees on both sides, their branches touching overhead like a green tunnel. My heart beat faster with every step. For years, I had imagined this moment, meeting Daniel again. The lake looked almost the same as when we were teenagers. The water was calm, reflecting the sky. I stood there, breathing deeply, trying to find courage. And then, suddenly, I saw him. Daniel was standing near the water, his hands in his pockets. For a second, I almost called his name. But then I noticed he wasn't alone. A young woman stood beside him. She held his hand. They were laughing together, their voices carried across the water. My legs felt weak. I hid behind a tree, my heart racing. He looked older, but still the same Daniel. The way he smiled, the way he leaned his head back when he laughed. But the way he looked at her, that was new. It was the look of love. I wanted to leave, but before I could move, he turned his head and saw me. His eyes widened. He said something to the woman and walked toward me. "Emma," he said. "Hi," I whispered. For a moment, we just stood there, both unsure of what to say. Then he gave a small smile. "You're here. When did you come back?" "Last week," I answered, my voice soft. The young woman walked over and stood beside him. She had long brown hair and a warm smile. He put his arm around her. "This is Brooke," he said. "She's my fiancée." The word hit me like cold water. Fiancé, it sounded sharp, final. I forced myself to smile. "Nice to meet you," I said. "Nice to meet you too," she replied kindly. Her voice was gentle, not proud or arrogant. That somehow made it harder. Daniel asked, "Where are you staying?" "With my aunt," I said. "That's good," he replied. "We should meet for coffee sometime, catch up." I nodded, sure, but my voice was low, almost lost in the air. They walked away, hand in hand. I stood by the lake, staring at the water. My eyes burned, but I did not cry. I walked home slowly, the cool air wrapping around me like a warning. My shoes tapped softly on the path, each step heavier than the last. At home, my aunt noticed my face. "You saw him?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I said. "And the girl?" "His fiancée," I whispered. She said nothing, only placed a cup of tea in my hands. The cup was warm, but my hands felt cold. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. For years I had imagined this meeting. In my dreams he waited for me. In reality he had moved on. Time had not frozen for him, only for me. I closed my eyes, but sleep did not come. All I could see was Daniel's smile, the same smile I loved, now given to someone else.
This part of Emma's story is painful, but it also gives us some powerful English expressions. First, notice the word fiancé. This word comes from French and means a woman who is engaged to be married. The male form is fiancé. In English, we pronounce them almost the same, but the final A in fiancé shows she is female. For example, my sister introduced me to her fiancé last week, or they have been fiancés for 6 months. It's a very formal word. You usually hear it when people make an announcement or in polite conversation. Emma also said, "The word hit me like cold water." This is a metaphor. Of course, words are not physical objects, but in English, we often describe strong emotions as if they were physical. You can say, "The news hit me like a stone," or "her words felt like a punch in the stomach." These expressions show how language can describe emotional pain in physical terms. Finally, Emma said, "Time had not frozen for him, only for me." This is a poetic way to say that she was waiting in the past while he moved forward with his life. We often use "time froze" to describe an unforgettable moment. When I heard the accident, time froze. Or, the first time I saw her, time froze. But Emma reverses it, Her memory froze in the past while Daniel continued living. Here's a cultural note. In small American towns, it's common for people to marry their high school sweethearts or people they meet locally. Unlike big cities where people move often, small towns keep communities close. That's why it's natural that Daniel met Brooke and built a new life while Emma was away. Now, here's your challenge. Can you describe an emotional moment using one of these expressions? For example, the message hit me like cold water. Or, when I saw my old friend, time froze. Try saying one sentence now. It will help you feel the meaning more deeply. Well done! Now, let's go back to Emma one last time. After meeting Daniel again, she must face the truth and decide how to move on. Let's listen to Part 4. Part 4.
The morning after seeing Daniel, I stayed in bed for hours. Sunlight filled the room, but I felt no warmth. My body was still, but my mind was loud, full of memories, questions, and pain. Why did I wait so long? Why didn't I call him, write to him, or visit sooner? For years, I believed we would meet again, as if life was on pause. But it wasn't. Life kept moving, and I was the one standing still. Later that day, I finally got up and walked to the lake again. The water sparkled in the sun, but it no longer felt magical. I sat on a bench and watched the ducks swim slowly. Nearby, children laughed and threw bread into the water. Their joy was simple, untouched by the weight of waiting or regret. I closed my eyes and whispered, "He belongs to someone else now." The words hurt, but they also felt true. I had to face reality. Daniel was no longer mine, and maybe he never truly was. That evening, my aunt found me sitting quietly at the kitchen table. She poured me tea and placed her hand on mine. "Emma," she said softly, "you have a kind heart. You waited because you loved. That's something to be proud of." Her words were gentle, but they carried strength. For the first time since I returned, I felt a little lighter. The next few days, I tried to fill my time. I helped my aunt in the garden, pulling weeds and planting flowers. The earth was warm, the sun touched my face, and for a moment, I laughed when mud stuck to my hands. My aunt laughed with me, and it felt real, not forced. One afternoon, I walked through town and saw a sign in a bakery window. "Help wanted." On impulse, I stepped inside. A woman behind the counter smiled. "Are you looking for work?" she asked. "Maybe," I said. "I just came back to town." "It's part-time," she said, "but we could use some help." I surprised myself by saying yes. It wasn't a big job, but it gave me something new to think about. Something that belonged to the present, not the past. That evening, as I walked home, I saw Daniel and Brooke across the street. They were laughing, holding hands, their heads close together. For a second, my chest tightened, but then something unexpected happened. The pain was softer now, almost quiet. I felt a little sad, yes, but I also felt free. When I reached home, I told my aunt, "I think I'll stay here for a while." She smiled and said, "I'm happy you're here." That night, I went to bed early. I thought of Daniel, but the picture in my mind was blurry now, not sharp like before. He had moved on. And finally, I realized I could move on too. I whispered to myself, I waited for him. I loved him. But now, it's time to love my own life. And for the first time in years, I fell asleep with a smile.
So, Emma's story has ended, but the feelings it left us with are still alive. Sometimes, when a story touches our heart, it's not really finished. It stays with us. And now it's time to turn those feelings into practice. Together, let's look back at some of Emma's words, understand them more deeply, and learn how to use them in our own lives. Because every phrase you just heard is not only part of her story, it can also become part of your English. First, she said, "My mind was loud." This is not about real noise. It means her thoughts were busy, noisy inside her head. In English, we often describe emotions with sound words. The silence was deafening. His anger was loud. Or her thoughts screamed at her. These are figurative, not literal. For example, before the exam, my mind was loud with worry. Try making your own sentence. What makes your mind loud? Next, Emma said, "I felt a little lighter." Remember in part 2 we talked about lighter, meaning easier or happier. Here it returns, but in a new way. She doesn't mean she lost weight. She means the pain is less heavy. You can say, "After talking to my friend, I felt lighter." Or, "Finishing my homework made me feel lighter." It's a gentle way to describe relief. Finally, she said, "It's time to love my own life." This is a powerful sentence. In English, we often use love not only for people, but also for life, activities, or even ourselves. For example, "I love my job." "I love mornings when the sun is bright." Or, "She finally learned to love herself." Here, Emma decides to stop waiting for someone else and focus on living her own life fully. Here's a cultural note. In many small American towns, finding a simple part-time job, like in a bakery or a store, is not just about money. It's also about community. Working there means meeting people, reconnecting, and becoming part of the town again. That's why Emma's choice is important. It shows her step toward healing. So, here's your challenge. Can you say one sentence about something that makes your life lighter? And one sentence about something you love in your life? For example, "Talking with my grandmother makes my life lighter." And "I love walking in the park in the morning." Try saying them out loud now. Great job practicing. Every time you say these words out loud, you bring them closer to your life. And now, before we finish, let's take a moment to look back at Emma's journey as a whole. You've just listened to Emma's story from her return to her hometown, through her painful meeting with Daniel, and finally to her decision to move on and love her own life. Stories like this remind us that English is not only about grammar or vocabulary. It's also about emotions, about expressing feelings, and about connecting with others. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Now let's make sure the words you learned today stay in your memory. We'll practice with vocabulary sets and mini stories. Remember, don't just read. Say the sentences out loud. Speaking is how you make the language truly yours. Now let's practice together. We'll take some of the most important words and phrases from Emma's story and really make them part of your English. Let's start with the first group. Do you remember when Emma talked about the quiet streets of her hometown? That's our first word, quiet. Then she heard Daniel call someone his fiancé. That's a woman who is engaged to be married. Emma also spoke of her heavy heart when she realized he had moved on. Later, she said she felt a little lighter when the sadness wasn't so heavy anymore. And of course, Daniel once told her, "I'll wait." 5 simple words, but full of meaning. Let me show you how these words can come alive in a short story. Imagine this. One evening, the streets were quiet. John looked at the ring in his pocket. Tomorrow, his girlfriend would be his fiancée. He felt nervous, but also excited. His heavy heart from yesterday's worries felt lighter now. "I'll wait for the right moment," he whispered to himself. Let's say it again, slowly this time. One evening, the streets were quiet. John looked at the ring in his pocket. Tomorrow, his girlfriend would be his fiancée. He felt nervous, but also excited. His heavy heart from yesterday's worries felt lighter now. "I'll wait for the right moment," he whispered to himself. Did you hear all 5 expressions inside that little story? Quiet, fiancé, heavy heart, lighter, wait. Now I want you to try something. If you can, write your own little story with these 5 words. Just 3 or 4 sentences, like the one I told you. If that feels difficult, no problem. You can simply make one sentence with each word. For example, my neighborhood is quiet at night. Or, talking to my friend makes me feel lighter. The important thing is you try to use them. Great. Let's move to the second group. Emma said that when she saw Daniel again, it felt like time froze. She also said her mind was wowed. So many thoughts inside her head. Later, she told herself she had to move on, even though it hurt. She described feeling like a guest in her own house because home didn't feel like home anymore. And of course, she remembered New York as a place full of life, always busy and energetic. And now let's bring those words into another mini story. Listen closely. When Sarah opened the old photo album, time froze. Her mind was loud with memories, and for a moment, she felt like a guest in her own house. But then she looked at her children playing in the garden, full of life, and she realized it was time to move on. Let's repeat it slowly so you can follow. When Sarah opened the old photo album, time froze. Her mind was loud with memories. For a moment, she felt like a guest in her own house. But then she looked at her children playing in the garden, full of life, and she realized it was time to move on. All 5 expressions are here. Time froze, mind was loud, move on, guest in my own house, full of life. Now your turn. Try to write a short mini story with these 5 expressions. It doesn't need to be perfect, just 3 or 4 sentences. If that feels too hard, you can simply make one sentence for each phrase. For example, when I saw the accident, time froze. Or, I need to move on after my mistakes. The key is to use the words so they stay in your memory. Great job! You see, every story gives us new words and phrases, but the real secret is to use them. Speak them, write them, and make them part of your own life. If you enjoyed this story and lesson, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and share it with a friend. And tell me, did you ever wait for someone too long? How did it feel? I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, keep learning, keep practicing, and keep believing in yourself. See you soon.